Esteemed colleagues, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our annual, or almost annual, Colloquium on Tea Culture, which is actually, this year, is the fourth edition. So it's been a while. It's a pleasure to have you here in Venice, in spite of this very unfortunate and unforgiving weather. As you know, Venice has been on the forefront of tea culture and tea studies for now over 4 centuries. As you know, the earliest mention, the first time tea was ever commented upon and written upon in the West was, in fact, in Venice in 1559. Right. And Venice is also the place where I started my research on tea back in the late 1980s, and where I managed to involve my former disciple and now colleague and friend, Livio Zanini, in the research on tea. This is the place where we founded the Association for Tea Studies. And we started working on the idea of having a recurrent event on tea, which ultimately turned out to be this colloquium. It's a very interesting opportunity, I think, for all people interested in tea culture, because this is, to my knowledge, the only conference or colloquium on tea in China and Japan, but then also tea in general, where you have the participations of scholars, either affiliated to established institutions or independent scholars, and also of practitioners. And I think this combination of practitioners and scholars is essential to the development of tea culture. Since tea, the practice of drinking tea, became very popular for a number of reasons, including a new concept of health and well-being, fashion, and many other interests in Asia and in the Far East. Since tea became very popular, let's say from the 1980s, all sorts of people jumped on the bandwagon of tea, and thereby, in this world, you have competent people, you have incompetent people, you have charlatans, you have aficionados, all sorts of people, as I said, each one claiming to have a knowledge or the right to the knowledge of tea culture, and thereby it's become very difficult to distinguish between those who have sensible approach or a sound knowledge, and those who are just doing it for profit or for some sort of misdirected passion. That's why I think this kind of colloquium, as we are having now, as we had 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, is very important. It's very important for the audience. It's very important for us, but it's also very important to the audience, because it gives you an idea of what's what, of who's doing what, and on how complex and differentiated is the world of tea culture. So today we have very interesting and number of, as I said, of scholars, of independent scholars and of practitioners. It's very hard to come across such a varied crew of people. So we will start with the first two of this session. And the first one is Gao Xuyang, who is a PhD student at the University of Oxford. and she's mainly interested in art history and archaeology. Thereby, she will talk about one of the many aspects, important aspects of tea culture, which is actually tea vessels. And the second one is my dear friend and colleague, who I've already mentioned, Livio Zanini, who's the very soul of this, and the person who actually did most for this colloquium and in general for the activity surrounding tea culture in Venice, and I would say in Italy as well. So I now